Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pop Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Tom Buck, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large counselor. Tiny Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 9th meeting of the Columbus City Council. We are going to be here all day, and so we hope that you all enjoy your time with us as well. But we have a very full agenda. Some of you all are going to be getting up sooner than others, and I know that you appreciate that. So we're going to move right along and start off this morning with Pastor Darnell Skinner. He is the pastor at Bread of Life Christian Center, and we're so happy to have him here. In fact, he's a good friend, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. So I have to put him on the agenda to have him come by to say hello. But please, if you would, Reverend Skinner. Yes, up here. Can you, my system isn't up? Yeah, if you could get his microphone. Thank you. There you go.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you and we bless you. And we come to you now as humble as we know how. And we're mindful of your grace and the gift of prayer. Thank you so much for allowing us to communicate with you. For without you, we could do nothing. Bless you now for another day to be able to do what you've called us to do. And I thank you now for this agenda that has been prepared, this great city of Columbus, and this city council that is in seat and presiding today. We thank you that you will give them wisdom and insight to be able to negotiate the affairs of our great city. We thank you now for each council person, name by name, our mayor. And God, we praise you now that you will look in on this city, and that as you will do it, you will unify us beyond understanding and beyond comprehension. Unify us that we might be an example to other cities, and unify us so that we can combat any social ills and disjustice. We praise you now that as we come together, we'll be reminded that two are better than one, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. So as we stand in solidarity, you'll make us a beacon of light in a dark place. We praise you now, Lord, that you will bless this city. Make us a unit that will be able to do all the things that any city would need to do in order to accomplish its goals. I praise you now that as we ask these things, you will cause our homes to be better, our schools to be better, our businesses to be successful, and every goal that is set for this city will be accomplished. It is this that we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Now unto him that is able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before the presence of his glory. To him be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now and ever. And all of God's people said amen.
Amen. Yes. Oh. Yes.
Come back up for just a minute. Good morning. I want to get it right. What's the title now? He's been elevated in the last year. What's your title now?
Those that love me call me friend.
Okay, friend. Go ahead.
Bread of Life couldn't find another pastor, so I now serve as the pastor of Bread of Life.
Okay. Just wanted to say good morning. We've had many conversations about marriage, and just wanted everyone to know he's paid me many compliments for my wife and I, us being out together and everything. So I wanted to let the world know that he's getting ready to leave the market. Congratulations. He will be getting married this spring.
That's right.
Yes. April 23rd is the date, and I'll be hooking up with my brown sugar.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for what you and your family do for this community. We appreciate you. All right, and now we have a special treat. We've got Gentian Elementary School. It's going to come forward and help us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And as they come forward, if you all will rise and prepare to join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much. You all did a wonderful job. Would you introduce yourselves? Tell us your name and what grade you're in.
I'm Morgan Clayton, and I am in 4th grade.
I'm Jamie Barclift, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Kayla Lewis, and I'm in 5th grade.
I'm Edgardo Diokno, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Trayvon Disu, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Saxon Anderson. My name is... Sorry.
That's all right.
My name is Saxon Anderson, and I'm in 4th grade.
All right.
My name is Ellie Scott, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Levi Garner, and I'm in 4th grade.
All right. You've got some folks with you today. Let's let them introduce themselves as well.
I'm Marty Foreman, the interim counselor.
I'm Tiffany Garner. I'm Levi's mom and a 2nd grade teacher at Gentian.
Great.
Jessica Burnett, the principal at Gentian. Thank you for having us today.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for what you do. Wonderful job. Let's give them another round of applause. And I hope you guys will come back and see us soon. Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Well, as we jump into the agenda, today is a very special day. I've learned that today is the birthday of Counselor Skip Henderson. So congratulations and many more. Let's give him a round of applause. And hope you have a wonderful day. I'm sorry you're going to have to spend 2/3 of it with us. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, our first item on our agenda is the FY15 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. We have Larry Young, our lead external auditor with Albright Fortenberry, to come forward and present our external audit. Good morning.
Mayor, council members. I'm here as a representative of Albright Fortenberry and Ninus. I'm a partner with the firm. We've conducted our annual audit of the comprehensive annual financial report in accordance with government auditing standards and the requirements of OMB Circular A133 for major programs. We issued 3 reports, one on the financial statement itself. We have an unmodified opinion, which in layman's terms means a clean opinion. We had an opinion on internal controls and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. It is a clean opinion with no findings and no problems with internal controls. We also issued an opinion on the compliance with OMB Circular A133. It is a clean opinion with no findings or internal controls issues. Did want to point out that this year it looks like the general fund did better than it did last year, with an excess of revenues over expenditures and other financing resources of a little over $2 million.
So how does that work? How is it that our general fund did better than last year and yet we fell below 60 days? Pam, that may be a question that's more in your bailiwick, but I'm sure that would be something that...
Well, looking at the previous 2 years, you had lost or had excess expenditures over revenues of, I believe, $4 and $5 million in the previous 2 years.
Oh, I see.
And in 2012, you had an excess revenues over expenditures of approximately $2 million.
I see.
And this can also be a component of, the budget is increasing.
Right.
So
Okay.
as a percentage or number of days of a larger number, that relates to a percentage difference.
Okay, so I guess could you extrapolate then that our management of the budget seems to be working as it relates to the general fund?
It did better this year than it did last year, let me say that.
Okay, all right. Good enough. Good enough.
And part of what we look at for fund balance is just the unassigned fund balance. So if there were additional reserves that we had to make, that would impact what we talk about as the unassigned fund balance of the 56 days. So if we're setting aside more funds to cover those funds that require support from the general fund, then that takes away from the unassigned, or claims and judgment takes away from the unassigned. So even though revenues over expenditures might have been better than previous years, those requirements for reserves were also higher than previous years.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, I wanted to just briefly walk through. I've passed out the management letter that we received and then my responses to the management letter. There were 4 comments on the management letter. One had to do with our loan program from CDBG and Home and how we were recording the loan schedule. We have a new community reinvestment manager, and that has been resolved. She's implemented quite a few new internal controls in the CDBG and Home program. So those spreadsheets have been created and are being maintained appropriately. The second item is a reporting issue on the pension investments. This is no impact to the pension fund or how it was invested. It was how we reported accrued interest. We had a new financial advisor during this fiscal year. The reports were different from the previous fiscal year, so there were some accrued interest that was not reported correctly, which has been corrected, and we made that adjustment. The third item, there's 2 parts, monitoring grants and project compliance. This has to do with both of these with our GDOT grants. The first item required us to have a site visit from historic preservation when we were 50% complete. The project manager made numerous phone calls and emails to the person to come in to make that site visit, could not get a response. These particular projects did not have any historic significance, so he proceeded forward with the project until later on we realized that the person that was our contact was no longer there. None of the emails were rejected, none of the phone calls were rejected, so there was just a miscommunication with historic preservation. They did come in at the end of the project and there was no issues, but that was something that we had tried to have them come in at 50% completion, and we just could not get in touch with them. So that has been corrected. The last item regarding an annual project letter, that was a miscommunication with the auditor. We did have that letter. The person the auditor had spoke with referred them to someone else, and somehow that was a miscommunication. But that letter has been provided to the auditor as of last month, so that is no longer an issue. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. Well, I thank you very much. We certainly have our reading materials here for future reference. Yes.
I did want to point out that this is the largest comprehensive annual financial report that we've ever assisted in producing. It has 184 pages.
Oh, great.
So there's a lot of information. There's a management's discussion and analysis that the Deputy City Manager provides that has a lot of good information. There are a lot of good statistical information in the back of it. So if you need something to go to sleep with, this would be a very good read.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Pam, anything further?
And I would also just like to recognize Jody Davis. She is our accounting manager, works really hard producing this document and managing the accounting division for the finance department. She is going through some medical issues and's been out for a while, so we keep her in our thoughts and prayers, but very appreciative. She worked really hard going through some treatment just to get this produced in time, so we just want to recognize her.
Such great work and commitment by our employees. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we do thank her very much, and please express our concerns as well as she continues on her journey. And I want to also bring up that just yesterday we received notice that once again we have received, and you're going to have to, the certification of financial excellence.
GFOA certification of achievement.
Okay. And not all cities get that. So
this was for the budget document, but we also received the same certification for the CAFR, and that has been submitted for review.
Well, that's extraordinary work, and let's give our team a round of applause. Thank you. You make us proud, even under these difficult financial circumstances. So, yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, thank you, Larry, very much. Appreciate all you do. All right. Next, we have the Regional Prosperity Initiative update. We welcome Brian Anderson, who's President and CEO of our Greater Columbus Chamber of Commerce, together with Bill Murphy, who's the Executive Vice President of Economic Development. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the Council. We're happy to be here this morning to talk about Regional Prosperity Initiatives. It's going excellent. We're about 3/4 of the way through, maybe 8/10 of the way through, and hopefully you're going to benefit from what Bill shares this morning, and hopefully we can answer any questions you have. Bill.
Great, Mayor, members of Council, thank you for giving us a few minutes. I hope to keep you on track for your lengthy agenda for today, so bear with me. There's a lot of information to cover. Some of you are more intimately involved in the process than others, but I thought this would be a great opportunity to get Council, as well as our citizens who are watching at home, an opportunity to know what we're doing in terms of our community and economic development strategic planning process. Got to be smarter than this. I can't get it to work. Oh, sorry. There we go. Just very quickly, I think this region takes for granted often the amount of work that you all put into public-private partnerships in doing and accomplishing all that you've accomplished over the last 20 years. There are very few regions in this country that can claim the kind of success that you all have had in promoting economic development during, quite frankly, a very difficult 15 years. So let's talk a little bit about why now. I was very inspired to hear Pastor Skinner this morning talk about us in our community and the desire to achieve our goals, and truly that's what this process is all about. It's about us achieving our goals. One of my favorite quotes, and some of you attended the Valley Partnership annual meeting, saw this quote before, but as Yogi Berra once said, the future ain't what it used to be. And that is really true of our economic development efforts. We've truly changed as a region. And you're going to see some data points that go back 40, 45 years. You're going to look at some a little bit more recent, the last 15 years. But any way you look at it, our region has changed dramatically. Whether you talk about how we've transformed from a predominantly textile producing region to one that is much more diverse, it is something that we recognize was an opportunity to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what's working well, what's not working well, and how can we be more deliberate and intentional in the work that we're doing to promote economic development. I think it goes without saying that in order to be successful, we've got to work quickly, we've got to work smartly, and we've got to work holistically. Holistically in the sense that this isn't just about us going up and talking to an individual about placing a business in our community. It truly is about building a community that businesses want to be a part of. So let's talk a little bit about that. I alluded to it in my last comment, but we are truly competing for jobs that could go really anywhere in the world. And one of the things that we're seeing increasingly, whether it's our visits to Nashville or Austin or other communities, And this is something that was delivered in a report for the CEOs for Cities, the Young and the Restless in a Knowledge Economy. And that this, again, goes back to my statement about we aren't just going and talking to companies about locating in the communities. It's truly about getting a community that's ready for investment. And rather than in a world in which places compete for businesses and people follow, we will increasingly live in a world where places compete for talent and businesses follow. And that is a fundamental change in what economic development is all about. And that is a very difficult conversation for many to have in a community because it really changes all aspects of how you go about recruiting new businesses, but more importantly, recruiting talent to our community. And I think this graphic really displays that. And I think this council and previous councils are to be commended because as you talk about building a community that is attractive for new investment, you really start about looking at the people and the activities and the things that are going on. You build on that the investments that you made in the quality of place, whether that's the facilities here in Midtown, the natatorium, what we've done along the river, the other investments that the city has made, as well as the private sector, are truly creating a place that is conducive to bringing talent to our community, which then ultimately leads to economic development. I talked a little bit about some of the challenges that we face, and let me just really quickly run through some of those challenges. As we looked back over the last 45 years, we recognized that this community grew tremendously, 22% or so, which is the envy of many communities in the Northeast and Midwest. Coming from Dayton, Ohio, I went back and I looked at the data from 1970 to 2015. The Dayton MSA grew by approximately 1%. And if you look at Dayton proper, that community shrunk by over 50%. So I think we need to put some perspective into our conversations about how we've grown as a community. But with that said, if you look at our peer communities across the Southeast, we have lagged in terms of the growth population versus those communities across the Southeast and the Southeast in general. We looked at a number of factors and tried to figure out what was contributing to that. I know you've probably heard the mayor talk about some of these issues, but one of the ones that really popped out to many of us was, well, maybe it's because we're not on a mainline interstate. And so we took some additional communities and did some evaluation and found that perhaps that could be part of the conversation, but if you look at the data surrounding other communities that are not on a mainline interstate, we're still growing more slowly than they are. So then we took a look at our employment, and one of the ways we looked at that was over the last 15 years, we looked at total non-farm employment. And as you can see, over the last 15 years, we have just recently, as of the end of last year, reached the number of jobs that we had in this community in the year 2000. Now, keep in mind, we went through 2 recessions, one, the worst since the Great Recession, where we lost a lot of jobs. But we also were able to backfill a lot of those jobs. Had it not been for some of that activity of our efforts to recruit new companies, we would be in a lot worse shape than we are today. And that really speaks to the kind of community that we've been over the last 40 years. We have lost thousands of jobs in the manufacturing, particularly the textile industry. Had it not been for forward-thinking folks, both elected officials and volunteer leadership like Jimmy Yancey, Jimmy Blanchard, Gunby, Jordan, and many, many others, this community would be in a significantly worse place. So I think we need to always take a step back and think about the work that's been done to get us where we are today. We also looked at things like education, and while we're doing a very good job, we've seen increases here in Muskogee County of our graduation rates. We are still challenged by the number of students graduating from college. We have a lot of people going to college. We're not seeing them translate those into degrees. So, with that background, why are we undertaking this initiative, and really how do we structure this regional prosperity initiative? I want to make sure that I commend some organizations who really stepped up to make this possible. The Development Authority of Columbus, through you all, the Chamber of Commerce, our friends at the Community Foundation, as well as private sector companies, W.C. Bradley, Georgia Power, and TSYS, all helped make this possible. So this process, and it is a process, and I want to make sure that we're very clear about that. This is, to be successful, this is not just a start and an end process. This is something that is an ongoing process in this community. And it is designed to create a sustainable prosperity for not just individuals, but our business community as well. And it's really designed to kind of realign and refocus our collective community and economic development efforts in a way that makes us more effective than we would be acting alone. So I talked a little bit about that process. It is a four-step process that really starts with that community assessment. I shared some of that data points. If you'd like to learn, there's you've got 2 great reading materials to help you fall asleep at night, the report that you just heard and the documents associated with the Regional Prosperity Initiative. It's a lot of information, but it is actually very good information and presented in a way that helps you understand some of the challenges and opportunities that we have. regionalprosperityinitiative.org if you'd like to get all of these documents. I mentioned the phase 1 competitive assessment. The second phase was really being a little more targeted, looking at the businesses and how we've targeted businesses and how we've marketed to attract those businesses and investments. And then the third phase is actually the strategic plan. The fourth phase, and where Brian mentioned where we are now, is really that implementation phase, and that really marks not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning, because this is where the work really begins. This is where we begin to implement these strategic initiatives and begin to measure how successful we are. So let's talk very quickly about some of the key takeaways at this point. I mentioned the population trends, slower growth in many of our peer communities across the Southeast. We recognize that talent is driving economic development, and we need to do a better job of not only developing and retaining it, but going after that talent. And that will be an important part of this strategic plan. We recognize that poverty continues to be a challenge. It is a challenge in communities across the United States, including successful communities like Austin, Texas. Quality of place and quality of life are absolutely critical in that ability to attract talent and, by extension, attract economic development opportunities. I mentioned our homegrown talent. Our pre-K through 12, we're making some tremendous strides through our local school district. Our colleges and our technical colleges and universities are also doing great things. We need to make sure that we're building on their success in a way that helps us be even more successful in attracting and retaining that talent. Our business and entrepreneurial climate, we've been very successful in attracting manufacturing to our community. In fact, Columbus, Georgia is one of the few exceptions across the nation that during the last recession actually grew the number of manufacturing jobs. But what we're not doing so well is growing that homegrown businesses. When you look at the number of businesses that have been in business less than a year, the number of people employed of businesses that have been around for 5 years or less, or the number of small business loans that we generate per capita, we're not where we need to be. So that will be an important part of our next step. You haven't heard me mention Fort Benning before, but certainly that is an incredible economic engine here in our community. We've seen from the analysis from University of Georgia to Columbus State University that the cuts at Fort Benning are going to have an impact if we don't do something about them. That's why we've got Gary Jones and the folks at the Fort Benning Partnership and the Columbus Chattahoochee Coalition working very hard to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support Fort Benning, including being in Washington, advocating on behalf of that installation, and doing what we can to prevent the disastrous impacts of sequestration that, while they've been delayed for another 2 years, are still on the horizon and still something we have to do with. Our end goal is the next round of the base realignment and closures. Clearly, we see opportunities there. We need to first make sure that we're focusing on stopping sequestration, but also making sure that we're building a case for Fort Benning for future mission growth at that facility. Last, but certainly not least, on our philanthropy, our leadership, and our champions in the community. I mentioned a few of them earlier, but clearly this community stands out among communities across this country for the philanthropic and volunteerism that we see each and every day here in our community. And that is what made a lot of this success in a very difficult economic transition, made it a much more palatable transition because of that great volunteerism and philanthropy. A couple other quick observations. I mentioned the low levels of educational attainment. Job growth has been relatively flat. We didn't get that bump in the mid-'90s that many communities saw. But then again, we didn't see the significant ups and downs that many companies or many parts of this country saw during the last recession. Poverty remains high. Our education is strong. We need to be doing more to graduate more individuals. And I mentioned we have a proud local history of homegrown companies, world-class companies that have certainly transformed our economy. And so we're looking at how we can build on their success while at the same time helping our entrepreneurs and small businesses gain the kind of resources that they need to become the next Aflac or the next TSYS. So in terms of our areas of economic activity, we were really able to condense those into 5 key areas. Manufacturing clearly is still an important part of our local economy and has been for generations. More recently, what we term finance and insurance has grown to be a critical part of our local economy. Business support services, call centers, although we heard that Road America was going to be ceasing operations, we still know that we are an attractive place for those kinds of operations because of things like Fort Benning and because we're a university town. We believe there are still opportunities around those areas as well. Travel and tourism, the work that we're doing as a community and as a region to be more attractive to conventions and bringing visitors in, whether that's Whitewater or doing what we can to make the Trade Center more attractive to larger conventions. That's going to be an important part of our work moving forward, and certainly you heard me mention Fort Benning. Moving forward, our focus is really going to drill down on those 3 ones that I mentioned previously: manufacturing, finance and insurance, and business support services. You see those. We see some great opportunities around cybersecurity. You may have seen recently that TSYS announced a significant investment at Columbus State University. We think there's a lot more opportunities around that industry in particular. So this really boils it down into one succinct slide for you. Our guiding principles in this entire effort was really about providing for prosperity for our communities, reducing poverty, and improving the overall quality of life. And under those, there are 5 what we call goal areas, or areas of focus, if you will. Shouldn't be a surprise if you're listening to me this morning. Talented and educated people, that is going to be absolutely critical to our long-term success. We need to be much more targeted in our economic growth. A lot of that is still going to revolve around making sure that we're building the kind of community by strategic investments in quality of life and quality of place investments. You're going to hear in the next presentation about one such opportunity with City Village. We think that holds tremendous promise for a number of fronts. An enterprising culture, doing what we can on entrepreneurial development, helping those individuals who want to start a business be successful and have the resources to grow their business here in Columbus, Georgia. Vibrant and connected places. We're doing great things in Uptown and Midtown, certainly soon to be City Village. Our friends across the river in Phoenix City are making investments that will ultimately help us as a region be more successful. Last but certainly not least is how do we then develop a cohesive image and identity, one that not only speaks to bringing tourists and conventions to our community, but also speaks to those young, talented individuals who are looking for a place to call home. We need to figure out a way to better tell our story outside of Columbus and how we tell that story to young people and, quite frankly, to economic development opportunities that I don't think we're doing as well as we can be doing. So what are the next steps in this process? Again, another one of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Edison: "A vision without execution is hallucination." And that truly determines how successful you are in terms of transforming your economy. This, as I mentioned before, is not a start it and end it kind of initiative. This is one that requires all of us to continue to work together, to evaluate how we're doing, and to measure our success. And you'll hear that over and over as we move forward through this implementation phase. We've got to figure out the right ways to measure how we're succeeding as a community. Measuring jobs and capital investment is certainly important, but also looking at things like our overall permit activity. Do you know that last year Columbus-Muskogee County had over $340 million in valuation associated with permits that were pulled. That's tremendous. That speaks to a lot of economic activity that's happening in this region that needs to be told, because that sends a message to not only our existing companies and our residents, but to outside individuals, those looking to make investments in our community, that we are a growing, prosperous community. So with that, I'll close and certainly answer any questions that you have, but I would be remiss if I did not thank our three tri-chairs. Jackie Lowe, retired Region West Vice President for Georgia Power, Audrey Tillman, Executive Vice President and General Counsel with AFLAC, and Jimmy Yancey, retired Chairman of Synovus and longtime friend of economic development here in this community. We've got a tremendous steering committee. I know several of you are involved in that, and we should be very proud of the commitment those members have made to this initiative. The consultant that we've worked with has repeatedly told us that they are impressed with the commitment that we have in terms of turnout and feedback at our meeting. So thank you again for the opportunity to give you an update on the Regional Prosperity Initiative.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. And I hope that, I know it was long and thick, but I hope everyone was listening, and this will run over and over again. I think some of the themes that you touched on are themes that I hope all our citizens are beginning to realize, is that we really are evolving as an economic development world. And it's hard to shake those notions you had of the past, that all you should do is if Brian would just get on a plane, or the mayor would just get on a plane and go fly and see some CEO somewhere, that business would come to Columbus. But the truth of the matter is, CEOs don't know where they're about to be proposed to move. They usually have a department that's committed to assessing populations and cities and places where they will be most successful pursuant to their matrix. And so it used to work sort of relationships and abatements, and that's all you had to do. But now really it's being suggested to the board and to the CEOs, these are the three cities we need to look at. And so by the time it gets to that point, you're either in the ball game or you've been cut out of the ball game. And it's a whole new world. And we have to thank the John Turners and the Roger Detweilers and the Frank Browns of the world, who many years ago started molding this community in a way for great quality of life, because that really is the predominant factor that these large companies and business opportunities are looking for. And if they hadn't started the rejuvenation of our downtown and some of the things that led to the revitalization of our community for today's world, I don't know where we would be. But we did a really good job holding on to the old model and making it work for a long time. And I really do commend the Chamber and the Development Authority for recognizing that these are really seismically changing times, and for trying to get out in front of it before we realize we're so far behind the curve. So thank you. It's a huge, like I said, evolution, and we appreciate you all leading that. We have the Mayor Pro Tem.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do we have any prospects in the pipeline, and are we getting the help that we need from the state?
Very good question. Yes, and you may have heard me talk before that we have a number of ways of tracking our pipeline of activity, but if I just do a count of our leads that I know have some level of interest in our community, there's roughly 13, ranging in size from $5 million in investment to well over $100 million in investment. Again, everything from call center operations to traditional manufacturing. When I say traditional, it's more high-tech manufacturing. So it really does run the gamut. In terms of our commitment from the state, I will tell you, certainly I've been here 2 years. I think we've got a great working relationship with the state of Georgia, particularly the state of Georgia's Department of Economic Development. With Brian's addition and his great relationships with them and more broadly at the state, I think Columbus is very well represented. And again, to the mayor's point, we can only be as competitive as what the companies are looking for. But every time that we're in the ballgame for a potential project, I think the state's been very fair to us.
Okay. I just know one of the issues in the past has been the things that Alabama gives up versus Georgia. And with us being on the line, sometimes we get caught in the wheel.
That's still something that we contend with. South Carolina is also one of those very aggressive states with their incentives. I think we are as aggressive as we can be given the resources that we have to work with. And again, the more that we can continue to focus on creating a community that's attractive to talent, I think the less we're going to be reliant on or subject to the challenges from an Alabama who may throw $1 million at a project, but it simply won't be an attractive place for them to invest because of our quality of life and our quality of place.
Thank you.
And a great example about that, to use an example they use themselves, is Oklahoma City, where several years ago they tried to land the headquarters of U.S. Air, and they put a package that was head and shoulders above any of their competitors. Millions and millions and millions of dollars of abatements and all sorts of things, property and all of that. And U.S. Air said, no way. And they went somewhere else with half or less the package. And when Oklahoma City asked, they said, because no one wants to live there. And they began on a trek to revive their city in a way that now it's one of the hottest cities in the United States. But in the 90s, they literally couldn't pay a company to come there.
And they used a local option income tax, or sales tax, much like we did to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian.
One silver lining out of all this transformation I think is going to be good for a lot of us is going back to my entry into this as a county commissioner, incentives have never been a positive thing. Nobody likes them. You don't like them as elected officials. Those of us have to deal with people asking us for the moon, don't like them. The beauty of this talent change is that incentives will become less of a game changer. They can be a tiebreaker. They can help you get over the hump if you've got a little bit of a disconnect. And I think if you look at South Carolina's recent successes, they've all gone to Charleston or Greenville, which again have made consistent investments in their quality of place. It's a great place to live in the sense that it's got a lot to offer. You haven't seen that in Columbia, which again is the capital, but has not made the investments that they need to. You haven't seen it in the rural areas of South Carolina or Alabama. So the good news is with this talent picture is we can get our hands around it. We can do better. We got a lot of momentum with Dr. Lewis and his team, a lot of momentum at CSU. Look at what's happening in Uptown with CSU. So let's downplay the incentives conversation and the traditional go out and knock on doors, and let's make sure that people see us as a place to live. We're going to go knock on some college doors and some job fairs and just tell young people the great story about Columbus. That's hard to do. You got to be a lot of places at the same time. But we're going to have people out doing that and selling Columbus at the grassroots level. If you do that as consistently as we are capable of doing, I'm very bullish we're going to get where we need to get to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Woodson.
Yes. Good morning. And Bill, I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you can tell us real briefly or if you can just guide me to where in that massive reading plan I can look at how you're planning on educating and getting our talent in this community. How are we going by that? I think it's important for our constituents to understand, because as it's been stated several times here, our constituents think that we just fly out, talk to a CEO, and we didn't do a presentation, come back. I think if they have a better understanding of it and their role as a parent, an aunt, an uncle, to ensure that the children are being educated and are being prepared for what the future is to hold, or what jobs can be coming to Columbus. I think it's very important in your presentation.
And that's an excellent observation. And to be very clear, as we end our strategic planning process and begin the implementation, that's really where the rubber hits the road. And that's where we're going to be developing specific tactics around not just attracting talent, not just going to colleges and universities, but also retaining the talent that comes out of CSU and Columbus Tech and our high schools, and going back down into our elementary and middle schools and talking about the importance of developing talent organically, whether that's through a refocused Partners in Education program, which I think has a role in developing talent, to tying in our young professionals and our leadership development courses. All of those are going to play a part in that overall picture. Our school district is going to be key among them, and that's why we'll be working very closely with David Lewis and his team to make sure that we're giving those opportunities to young people in our community so that they know that down the road they're going to have an opportunity here in Columbus, Georgia.
And I feel that, and this is just my personal opinion by listening to what you're saying, I feel that we need a big campaign about the importance that parents' role plays in the education of their children, because we tend so much nowadays to be able to bring the bread and butter to survive, some to live with the Joneses, and we're forgetting the most important part of it is that educational piece to prepare our children for the future. I'm not saying it's happening all around, but if we're going to recruit good jobs, if we're going to recruit talent, then we need to make sure that our own children are prepared for that opportunity to growth, because they're our future leaders. They're the ones that are going to take your job, my job. And I think it's important that we embedded that. And I think the marketing, I think our media helping us, asking questions, what part are you playing in your child's education? Implementing these things, because remember, for a time period now, children were having children. And the education system, a lot of things are taking things out that prepare people for the future because of the change. So I just feel very strong in that, and I just needed to voice that it's not just a college, it's not just a business, it's a collaboration of a bunch of things together. And every Tuesday, every Monday, once a month, we have talent standing right before us. Talent that this community doesn't even know it had existed, who is taking our names and putting us sunshine throughout this world. And I just needed to voice that to let you know. The second point I wanted to make was that, Isaiah, I'm not sure how we can do this, and I'm not sure if the chamber is willing to, but I'm interested, and I'm going to make the request. I think in a work session the chamber should come back and explain to us the process, so that our community can understand the process it takes to go out after a company or to get a retailer in our community, so that the individuals understand it's not like the old days where they went to the chamber and that was it. In today's society now, with computers, social network, people dress any old way, come to your community, stands by you and say, how do you like your neighborhood? How do you like your community? And that presentation that person makes can change a business from coming into the community. You were talking about the not so much focusing on incentives, but how we compare with South Carolina. Why is it their quality of life oversees many other communities? I like to compare us with a community like that it's taking a lot of these major corporations in, and we have the ability to do that. And our quality of life here is fantastic. If people don't take an opportunity of it, it's upon them. But I can fill my whole calendar for a whole week of things to do. It might not be the same thing everyone likes, but there is a lot. I would like you to come back, because I would like my constituents, I would like this community to see what's that process. What does it take? What did it take, like a good example, what did it take to bring NCR here? What happens when you go to the state of Georgia and there are companies looking at us? What all you have to do? What do you have to offer them? What kind of taxes? This kind of information, while it might be simple to some and just natural, it's not to our community. And I like for us to do it in a work session where a presentation is so our community understands.
I think that's excellent. I want to apologize, Councilwoman.
No, that's fine.
I didn't mean that recruiting people was the only option. You're exactly right. 80% or more of our opportunity is our local talent. I remember Mayor Reed in Atlanta made a comment one time. If they want to recruit engineers, all they have to do is say that the jobs are there, and 1,000 engineers will apply, or any other profession. And they leave behind the 2 out of 6 Atlanteans that never going to have opportunities if they're not careful. We're working closely with Dr. Lewis, Dr. Markwood, and Dr. Hoover in the sense it's got to be holistic. Bill said that in his presentation. It's got to be from, and it used to be, we looked at 3rd grade, and then we might have said 8th grade, and we might eventually said his graduation rate. If you're not talking about education or development pre-birth, you're backing up. We've learned that through North Georgia. We learned it in Chattanooga in the sense that we've got to help families not only have successful births, then make sure from the time they are born to the time they're 4 years of age, they're getting some level of development. It's going to be different in every family, but you got to help those that may not know how to help themselves in some respects. I'm glad to see our United Way chairman here. United Way is a great example of bridging that gap. We, the Chamber, do economic development. We work with Peter and his team on marketing, but you got to have United Way and every other agency, churches and small development centers, helping those families with their children early. That way they can compete for school when they get into the kindergarten. They're ready for school when they get there. Then at third grade, we've got to make sure they're ready to read so they can go on with their education. Having people like Dr. Lewis who get the message, Dr. Hoover, Dr. Markwood, who understand there's a connectivity will help us take care of our homegrown. And you're exactly right. Every citizen here, I've talked about ladders. You got to have success, have nets to make sure people don't fall through the cracks. We got to start building some ladders too that take people from one stage of life to the next stage. And most communities haven't thought that far ahead. They're just happy if they do the traditional, land a project, get a few announcements in the paper. I think Columbus has potential from everything that's been done here by school systems, by you all, and other leaders. We've got more potential than half the people in the Southeast, maybe in the country, if we utilize those assets, we utilize the talent that's available. But it doesn't happen by accident. Everything Bill just said talks about how competitive the world is. We've got, young people graduating high schools and going off to colleges and never looking back to the communities they left. How do we make sure this place is attractive for that person who grew up and never left, but also somebody who may want to leave Atlanta and come to a place like this that has quality of life? So very difficult process, but we will trust me, we will look after homegrown just as much, if not more so, than anybody we're trying to recruit. Thank you.
Councilor Davis.
I want to thank you all for coming up and sharing with us today, and I think we'd all agree that cultivating our young talent and educating our youth and is certainly important, and I think we'd all agree that our education system is valuable and key to this initiative. I'd like to propose another thought in the mix here. I would like to I'd like to say that I believe that we have a tremendous amount of talent that's already here looking for opportunities, educated talent, 4-year degrees, advanced degrees that are already here. And what I'm seeing is there's somewhat of a vacuum, and Mr. Murphy, we've already kind of somewhat briefly talked about this, but somewhat of a vacuum, or call it a time schedule, where you have an opportunity, you have a limited amount of time for this talent because they come back here. They go off, they seek degrees, advanced degrees, specialty degrees, very talented people. And they come back here, and I think sometimes they get disconnected or maybe not so engaged in being able to really reach out to where these opportunities are. And I know with social media there's a lot of opportunities there, but often this talent that I'm talking about is disappointed. So they tend to find the job somewhere else and they leave because you've got a short period of time to recognize this talent and to get them connected back into their local community or our local community. Is there a possibility that we can start identifying these individuals that I'm talking about, these talented youth, young workers that I'm talking about that want to get into the labor force? Create a database maybe. Give them the opportunity to tie into maybe that type of skill set that you're looking for, where their strengths are, and maybe be able to promote them here in our local community with our companies. I see that quite often, that they'll sit there for a period of time, and you've got a short period of time to connect them. And if you don't, they leave and they'll go somewhere else because the opportunities are somewhere else. Now, that's somewhat the world we live in, but I think in this initiative that's something that we can focus on as well, and being able to identify, create a file, a database, and hey, here's what we have to offer.
Absolutely. And one of the other programs that I would offer up that we're already doing very well in this community, and that is our Young Professionals program. That really is the envy, I think, of young professional programs across the country. Almost 800 young professionals in this community interacting and talking about opportunities and referring people is doing great things in this community. And I think that's part of the solution. But to your point, I think there's other opportunities to make sure that we're engaging that talent before they elect to go off to another community and build their careers and their families.
And you're right, that's one avenue. I'll give you an example. In the past 2 weeks, I've had 3 people come to me looking for people to fill a spot in their company. And I was surprised. I was really surprised. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're asking, you're looking for people? And, you know, everybody's out there saying that I can't find a job, but there's jobs that are out there. And I see that quite often, but connecting that right person with that job before they leave or before they're forced to go somewhere else looking for an opportunity, I think that's important. How do you do that? I'm not sitting here saying I have the answer, but I think that's part of this equation is keeping our local folks who are educated and highly educated and specialized in areas before somebody else takes them away to a different area in our country.
I think that's a good, excellent point and well taken. And one of the things that Brian has instructed us to start working on is getting a database of those individuals graduating from Columbus Tech and Columbus State just as one avenue so that we can better understand what their degrees are and is that matching up with the jobs that we're seeing in the community. So I think that, again, part of the answer, but a lot more work to do. Thank you.
Let's see, we have Councilor Woodson.
Bill, I just wanted to add a little bit on that thought, and I apologize. I just think the conversation is really good this morning. When you take this information back, it's something to consider what Councilor Davis is saying. I don't know if it would be the chamber or the city or who would do that. It would be great if there was a place where individuals that graduated from school or came to our community from another community via the military or a family member or something and would like to know what companies offer what type of jobs, what opportunities to compare them. I'm not saying be their job recruiter, but have something available that people would know. I can go here, they'll tell me what all these companies are about. Here's my degree, and let me go call one of these, and here's a human resource number. Let me go call them and see if they have any opportunity. It's just, and I think that will also bring the chamber some credibility and something different. I just thought about it as we were talking, and you're talking about the strategy. What I gather of his conversation is if, you know, people have a place to go to know, okay, what does TSIS really does? What does W.C. Bradley does? What does NCR does? What, you know, these companies does? And what type of, then these individuals can take their degree and look and see, hey, you know what? Let me call that company, see. Let me go online and see if they have any opportunities. They'll know where to go, where to contact someone to get started. It's not that you would become a job recruiter, but have the information. I don't know if it's the city, you, like I said, I don't know who, but I think based on what Glenn said earlier, I think it's an awesome idea, and it gave me that thought because I have people that work for me in the call center that comes because they need a job. They just finished school or they transitioned, they needed a job, they come to the call center until they can find something else. And they are really good, talented people with degrees that they really don't know where to go.
I think these are all great recommendations and tactics that we'll need to employ in our overall plan, so thank you.
Thank you for listening.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Excellent job, as you can see. Everyone's very interested, and I think the citizens are particularly interested, so we appreciate you all coming by. Thank you for your hard work. We have some folks from out of town, but we also have some folks that have taken off work this morning to present a check. It's 2 minutes, they assure me, and so we want to make sure they're able to get on back to work. If we could have Mr. Aaron and those with Home from Good come forward. And this is with the Tri-Latino Festival. Yes, ma'am. To make the presentation. Thank you all.
And it's Erika.
Yeah, I think maybe Mr. Aaron had to leave, and I wanted to make sure no one else left before they were able to make the presentation. Thank you. If you just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about this while you make the presentation.
Good morning. My name is Eli Cojera from the Tri-City Latino Festival, and we are presenting this check to Home for Good. We usually do this. This is our third year donating to this great cause, and we are very happy to be, still be contributing.
So
and to help more people.
These are the proceeds from the Tri-Latino Festival
Yes, correct.
that you had that was very successful, and the nonprofit organization that you chose to benefit as a result of those proceeds is Home for Good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Let's give them a
Thank
round
you.
of applause. And excuse me, is it Pat?
It is.
Yes. Introduce yourself and tell us who you are. You're brand new to our community.
I'm Pat Frey. I'm the executive director for Home for Good. I've been there since January the 4th. Have volunteered and served as a liaison between Columbus Regional and Home for Good, the United Way, for about 3 years. And so I'm anxious to work with all of you and make great things happen.
Well, we're so glad to have you, and we see Lynn Williams, who's on your board, and also Ron King, who's helping out, and several others. You all are doing tremendous work through the Zero 2016 campaign, and we're so glad that the Tri-Latino Festival chose to honor you with their with the proceeds of the benefit that they held. And Councilor Woodson, did you want to make a quick statement?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I know we're in a little hurry because we have a lot of presentations, but I think it's very important to take that moment right now, to do this. Why it's not a lot of money. It's $3,000. It's $3,000 less that Home for Goods have that could benefit a family. And the Tri-City Latino Festival does that because they want to give back to the community that's giving to them. And Columbus is supporting the festival. It's become an annual event where people look forward to. So as the festival pays their expenses and prepare for the next, whatever funding is left, we, as the Tri-City Latino Festival, have decided to give it back to the community. We don't keep the remaining dollars for paying anybody or anything like that. We want to give back because we're appreciative of what the community accepting the festival, which is more of an international festival than anything. And for the things it does, this is a great community, and we want to be a part of it, and we want to share. May it be a little, maybe medium, maybe big. It comes from the heart. And in behalf of the board and the Latinos in this community and those that support it, we want to say thank you. And we felt that your organization trying to help the less fortunate was important for us to give to your organization. And I hope that you appreciate it and know that it comes from the bottom of our hearts. And we thank you for what you do for those who are less fortunate.
And we certainly do appreciate it. And it will go a long way in affecting the lives of those in our community. And we've had experience with that recently with the MLK fires and all. And so we can take a little bit of money and stretch it a long way when helping those in our community, because it is a community effort and everyone chips in. So we certainly do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And the Mayor Pro Tem just wanted me to clarify that Home for Good is a nonprofit organization that works under the umbrella of United Way.
That's correct.
To execute and implement our 10-year plan to end homelessness.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're making great strides. And so, again, thank you for what you do. And to those who lead the Tri-Latino Festival, thank you for not just giving us a festival and a place to come together as a community to celebrate, but for benefiting a very worthy cause. So thank you all very much. Let's give them another round of applause. All right, next we have the City Village Master Plan. We're going to call forward Marquette McKnight, who co-chairs the City Village effort, and allow her to introduce our special guest today.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be with you this morning and present the master plan for City Village. Unfortunately, my co-chair, Phil Tomlinson, couldn't be with us this morning, but he sends his warmest regards to all of you. And in actuality, I didn't even realize it last night when we were putting the final touches on everything. This really was your birthday present. It was a surprise skip, so I hope you really appreciate it. You can unwrap it now. So you just heard from Bill Murphy from the Regional Prosperity Initiative, and this plan, the master plan, will be one of the many economic development tools that we can use to attract talented and educated people, target economic growth, and create an enterprising culture for a vibrant and connected neighborhood in Columbus. As with all good things in Columbus, this plan wouldn't have been possible without a public-private partnership that was heavily supported in every way by Historic Columbus. Their input, their commitment, and their passion for this project has been an invaluable asset for our city and our taxpayers. We greatly appreciate their support, specifically by providing staff support through Justin Krieg, who has done a tremendous job keeping everyone on task, coordinating the endless scheduling for public input, and providing his own very knowledgeable expertise and ability to get things done in a thoughtful and very diplomatic way. The city and the citizens of Columbus are fortunate to have had that support. And as a co-chair, I'm tremendously grateful for Historic Columbus and Justin's very capable leadership. I'm sure he is ready to stop being my mentor, instructor, and guide in neighborhood development. This plan has been a long labor. A task force of about 30 people have been actively working on this project for over 18 months in a myriad of ways. We started the process with a series of tours, beginning with a City Village tour for City Council and City Planning staff, where many of you joined us in a close-up and intimate look at the exciting possibilities of this neighborhood. We have held over 80 large and small meetings with interested folks from all walks of life, including the residents of City Village, other neighborhood groups, developers, chamber folks, churches, every social and human resources agency, nonprofits, foundations, real estate folks, architects, dozens of businesses in the area and several expressing interest in moving here, technology leaders, artists, restaurateurs, entertainment, community activists, healthcare leaders, doctors, hospitals, economic developers, educators from our school system, builders, large and small, universities, the housing authority, bankers, public safety, and our utility companies, including Georgia Power and the Columbus Water Works. We were almost always joined by many folks in these meetings from people from the Columbus Consolidated Government who have been extremely helpful through every step of this process. And we think every one of the city councilors attended at least one of our public hearings. In short, this has been a well-attended, arduous, thoughtful process with tons of input from people who care and want to make this neighborhood a vibrant place to live and work. A neighborhood with an unparalleled bluff view of the river, and that's a lot to admit coming from someone who already has a mighty good view of the river. Throughout this entire process, we have been very capably led by the firm of Ziskovich Architects under the very skillful leadership of Grace Perdomo, who has done a masterful job in developing the master plan and coordinating with other associates that I will let Grace introduce today. On behalf of the over 400 volunteers who supported and had input in this project, we are extremely pleased to present you this morning with the City Village Master Plan. Grace?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Marquette. And thank you to the Historic Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Consolidated Government. On behalf of our team, we appreciate your untiring dedication and commitment to this planning effort. We are true believers that all successful revitalization depends first and foremost on successful leadership, on leadership that is inclusive and change-oriented, and also that is a cumulative effort of the untiring dedication of many different people and organizations in order to effect change. So again, we're very grateful to the many hours of dedication from many stakeholders, as Marquette has summarized, that have gracefully donated their time and provided very valuable input to this effort. We have 4 agenda items listed for today. I'm going to gloss over items 1 and 2 so that we can spend the bulk of our time with you this morning covering items 3 and 4, strategies and recommendations and implementation. Before I do that, let me introduce our team. My name is Grace Perdomo. I'm an architect and urban designer with Ziskovich Architects based in Miami, Florida. We specialize in downtown urban revitalization and development. We led the community visioning and urban design components of this process. I'm joined this morning by Paul Lambert with Lambert Advisory, who has worked on many of our projects and addressed the economic market assessment component of our work, and also by Mickey O'Brien and James Lawson with AECOM, who addressed the transportation and infrastructure planning efforts, components of this effort. In a very, very quick summary, in 2014, the city entered into this planning process from a position of great advantage, largely the result of over 5 years of planning, coordinating, and implementing strategies for Uptown. The work in Uptown is by no means finished. It continues to evolve, yet we believe there's an enormous opportunity to leverage the many successes in Uptown with a redevelopment strategy, and not only in Uptown, but also in neighboring communities like Midtown, Bid Village, and Liberty Heritage, to be able to look at continuing these efforts upstream, complete the Riverwalk with the revitalization of City Village into a riverfront in-town community. The resulting plan has several components. It creates a vision or a roadmap that is unique to City Village. It includes an economic development component. It also includes a transportation and multimodal connectivity plan, which we will cover in detail. It addresses design standards that will guide development and redevelopment in the future, and also creates a framework for conserving and preserving what is unique about this particular community. This graphic summarizes our planning timeline. We started back in February of last year. I don't remember it being quite as cold as it is today. But it included a series of group and stakeholder meetings, a series of workshops revolving around particular themes, and concluding with the City Council presentation today. As Marquette mentioned, over 60 organizations have been involved in this planning effort. Many of these organizations today sit on or are members of the City Village Steering Committee, and are represented by churches, local businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations. We held community workshops in February, followed in April, and also in June. Meetings were large, small, involved, again, public meetings, roundtable discussions, and so forth. And what was identified or evolved as a consensus of these meetings was looking very closely at what were the locational attributes of City Village, and agreeing that one of the things that was worth building on but also preserving is the natural character of the area to foster economic development and cultivate inclusive and diverse environment that can attract both public and private investment, and in the end lead as a model for successful urban redevelopment within the city. So imagine a city village where we can preserve the unique character of this area that's very different from Uptown, very natural in its landscape. Look at the abandoned City Mill, which is an enormous historic asset within the community, and start to build on these particular components as important elements of placemaking. In the end, to create and redevelop, revitalize an in-town riverfront community that encourages both mixed-use and mixed-income development, looking very closely at the Second Avenue corridor as a critical access gateway, not only into the City Village District, but of course into Columbus, leveraging successes, creating jobs, and again, serving as a national model for urban economic development. So in the long term, again, we're looking at this urban mixed-use riverfront district. Development will necessarily need to be jump-started by both public investment and private development interest, and it will have to occur incrementally, of course. We believe the heart of the City Village District, we've identified several areas, but could revolve around being the redeveloped City Mill site or the redeveloped Chase Home site, and we'll talk in detail about that in a minute. From a marketing perspective, just quickly to summarize, as I mentioned earlier, Lambert Advisory conducted a market assessment on City Village. We very much ground our work of urban design and planning based on market read of the area. And in a nutshell, the conclusions are that the housing market in the short term is the strongest market segment for the area, followed potentially by office and retail. And of course, government and institutional uses are also potential market opportunities for the area. So if you take these 200 acres of land bordering the river along 1.2 miles, a total of 30 blocks that are mostly publicly owned land, there's a series of strategic investments or strategies that we believe are opportunities for investment and connectivity. And this, again, this diagram shows the areas of potential, where these potential opportunities lie. The strategies that have been developed as part of the plan are a total of 4. I'm going to let Paul Lambert walk you through strategies 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll spend the balance of the time addressing the actual physical intervention components of the plan.
Thank you, and good morning. Thanks, Grace. Just to talk about, we've learned from our experience that looking at these plans very narrowly in the physical aspects of the plan, especially in neighborhoods such as City Village, where the fabric of the neighborhood isn't complete. It's been there's many gaps within the fabric of the neighborhood, is not enough, and we need to look at strategies that go beyond that, and within the context of the plan, to really include those strategies as part of the overall development. And so let me walk you through 3 of them, starting our first 3 strategies. One thing to be aware of, and this is an important point, is that City Village at its core is only 200 acres of land. The 85% of the 200 acres are vacant. Are vacant. So there's no development on 85% of the parcels. And of the vacant parcels, the city owns approximately 50% of the vacant parcels. Not only are you the agency or the entity that'll be responsible for seeing the redevelopment, you also happen to be the largest property owner within that neighborhood. And so therefore, you have a whole other level of decision making beyond just as the city, but also landowner. Our goal is really to figure out a way of filling the uptown to mid-village gap, being more than just that middle piece between the 2 entities. And so we've started to think through how does that occur. There has to be a continuation of a process and an entity which oversees City Village going forward. So we've kind of branded this or called it the City Village Alliance, an entity which sees this process going through. It's come together. There hasn't been a lot of participation from people within the neighborhood. It's come from the outside. So part of the process is encouraging more participation within the neighborhood. Also, we are recommending or looking forward the potential of designating City Village as a TAD. I know you all have never heard that term, TAD, but there is it obviously it meets if City Village of any place within the city meets that minimum requirement of a blighted area. It is truly blighted, and whatever strategy are available for that certainly fit City Village, and to the extent that you all decide that you want to move forward with that, becomes a core area that could benefit from it. One key area, clearing and pruning the riverfront parcels, seems awfully simple, but it is critical to the future of City Village. Right now, you stand on First Street and even in Bradley Circle, you cannot see the river, and it's largely because there's invasive species that have grown in between the trees. So a very low-cost strategy of opening up City Village to the river is actually going in and making sure that those invasive species have been taken out. That you've now opened it up, and for the first time, for many parts of City Village where you couldn't have seen the river for many years, you have the opportunity for actually seeing the river. So it becomes an opportunity of being able to look at that going forward, filling the Riverwalk gap between the City Mill site, which of course you've already started to fund as well. The second strategy is really around encouraging this creative economy. You heard some of this in the last presentation, but specifically looking at making sure that there's supportive services continue in the neighborhood. This is beyond homeless services. These are for people in housing as well. Obviously, there is this concentration of homeless services already. Artist relocation. We've found a program in Paducah, Kentucky, which is a very good model, very similar neighborhood adjacent to their core of the city that would be appropriate for City Village. Village. Creative space initiatives, where creating spaces that creative industries could survive and thrive as well. And finally, this notion of an entrepreneurial forum, having entrepreneurs from outside the neighborhood participate in figuring out, and these are local entrepreneurs, local people that are leading in terms of thought and business development of what the future of City Village could be. Number three, none of these neighborhoods are much without marketing. City Village needs to be more than, hey, that area in between Bibb City and Uptown. It needs to have its own character and its own face to it. And so we've outlined a series of strategies that get out how to market City Village going forward. A dedicated web portal, developing market materials specific to City Village, unique signage and wayfinding programs. These are things that the city may not be involved in many of these aspects of the redevelopment, but certainly going forward, our expectation is someone needs to be able to take this on because City Village needs to have its own sense of place, its own sense of character. And to that end, Grace will take you through the notion of placemaking and what it means for the future of City Village.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So let's talk now about placemaking, which is the last part of our presentation. I mentioned earlier our work is very much grounded on downtown urban revitalization and redevelopment with a focus on finding what is unique and authentic about a place and building the master plan around it. The final plan document includes a series of maps and analyses of conditions within the neighborhood. This particular graphic summarizes the areas that we believe what we call gaps in the fabric, where there is the highest concentration of vacant land within the 200 acres of the planning study area. And it's important to note these areas because it also includes largest percentage of vacant and underutilized land that could potentially be used as an opportunity for redevelopment within this community. When you look at this map, a lot of that area is represented by the white that you see here. The black are existing building footprints, and potential build-out for the community would look something like this. Again, taking advantage of these large parcels of vacant, undeveloped land, a lot of them with offering excellent views of the river. We identified 4 key areas for targeted revitalization. All ranging in size from 30, the 4 of them ranging in size from 30 to 40, 50 acres. We have what we call CV1, CV2, CV3, and CV4. The area that is in the southernmost end of the property, that's between the railroad tracks and Talbotton Road, is centered around the City Mill existing building that is currently undergoing revitalization. We believe that there's enormous potential to develop it for adaptive reuse, and we'll talk about that in a minute. CV2, moving further north, is located between Talbotton Road and 25th Street and centers around Chase Homes and the redevelopment of that particular property. Further north, between 25th Street and 35th Street, is centered around Bradley Circle, and the potential, the largest concentration of vacant land surrounds that particular area, is located within that particular area. CV4 centered around Johnston Mills, and of course it's the northernmost section of the study area and provides the opportunity to create a significant gateway entryway into Columbus at this particular location. We've also identified the actual riverfront property and the opportunity of over 38 acres, again, to clear, prune, and open up views towards the river. So walking you very quickly through these particular sections, these pink dots that you see on the map are identifying parcels that are currently vacant and, again, offer opportunities for infill development, as you see here, surrounding the City Mill. Outside of the study area, TSIS presently owns property that is currently vacant and, again, at full build-out, could potentially be developed to enlarge their current campus and include a mix of both office and housing development. We cite this particular example from Atlanta as an adaptive reuse of an existing historic building, and we think that City Mill most certainly has the potential to be developed into a mixed-use center, again, that can offer retail and entertainment opportunities for the City Village community. This is an image that shows the current aerial view of the area surrounding City Mill. As you can see, there's an abundance of vacant land surrounding the mill itself. And this is a rendering depicting at full build-out with City Mill at the heart of that particular area or zone, with 18th Street being an important connector between 2nd and 1st Avenue, terminating at the City Mill building. CV2 covers an area of about 40 acres, of which 6 acres are currently occupied by Chase Homes. As you know, the existing power plant, Georgia Station, is located immediately to the south of Chase Homes. The area covers all the way from Talbotton Road to 25th Street. Again, the pink dots are representing areas that surround Chase Homes that are currently vacant. We believe, again, that there's an opportunity to redevelop, particularly Chase Home site, and provide an open greenway area towards the river that at full build-out can include a variety of uses, including institutional, office, government uses, particularly given the close proximity to the Georgia Power Station. The pink dots, again, are representing infill in the form of housing, and there's an existing Riverwalk access that today is sits up where number 2 is. We're proposing that a 20,000 square foot community building be built at this location, particularly because it can offer eyes on the park, if you will, and create a safe environment for, again, safe access to the Riverwalk at this particular location. These are views of the potential use of that green space along the river that are from communities throughout the country. Existing view highlighting the location of Chase Homes, the Georgia Power Station, and the City Mill building, and a rendering depicting the potential build-out at that particular location with a redeveloped Chase Homes site that includes potentially institutional, office, and housing and retail uses. CV3, or Zone 3, Development Area 3, surrounds Bradley Circle. It occupies an area of about 50 acres of land. As I mentioned earlier, it includes the largest concentration of city-owned land.
Grace, we have a question.
Yes.
Councilor Huff?
Excuse me, could I get you to back up one slide and show me where TSIS is located? Yeah.
In this slide?
Yes.
I don't think I have a, can't see my finger.
Can they, do you have a way that they can indicate on the slide? I think they're going to show you the technology here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. TSIS is located here.
Okay.
City Mills is here. And here you have the Georgia Power Station, which we have rendered a way in which it can be screened from view.
Okay. Thank you.
This here is 20th Street, and along with 18th Street, which leads to the City Mill site, we think are important east-west connectors off of 2nd Avenue. And they have been proposed to be both treated as boulevard entryways into those two particular development zones.
Tiasha, please help.
How do we
in deleting that? I think you sweep it all clear. There we go. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, around Bradley Circle, an important intervention in this particular area is the proposal to include, at present, if you look at this diagram, Riverside Drive does not connect through to Bradley Circle. It terminates right about there. And we think it's important, once you clear the riverfront and prune the invasive species and get that full view of the river. The proposal to actually continue Riverview Drive and connect it to Bradley Circle. We think that that provides a secondary entry way into Bradley Circle, allows opportunities to develop parcels or blocks rather, 2, 4, and 3 with mixed income, mixed finance housing, a total of about 200 new units of housing in this neighborhood, which we think can go a long way to stabilizing the character of the neighborhood and in turn also act as a catalyst for further investment. In number 8, we think it's an important, also given the scale and character of this particular zone, the incorporation of an artist loft or gallery space. During many of our meetings, we heard a lot from folks involved in the arts and working with kids and children in the community and finding that the benefits of arts and music, dance is something that they would like to see potentially being supported